As we understood previously, there are three important characteristics of vital statistics. Those are birth and death, predominantly the two. The other ones include marriage and divorce. So in this section we would be focusing on the death as one of the vital statistics that we would study, and here what we would understand predominantly is the mortality indicators. But before that, we would get acquainted to some of the terms which are utilized when we are talking about mortality. So what is the difference between a fetal death, a stillbirth, a infant death, child death, miscarriage, abortion? Then some of the indicators which include the CDR, the age specific death rate, infant mortality, maternal mortality, and then the elements of morbidity which include incidence, prevalence and case fatality ratio. So as we proceed one by one, we'll talk about each of those. Mortality simply means the number of deaths that occur within a population. Now, eventually everyone dies, but what are the factors that are linked to mortality? It can be age, it could be gender, it could be race, occupation, it could be a hazardous occupation in which a person is involved, and there can be social factors or social classes associated to it. The incidence of death rate would depend on the quality of life, would also depend on the availability of the healthcare facilities, and that has been well explained under the demographic transition theory, which is also known as epidemiological transition, which we would understand in a while later, right? Under the mortality, there are two important terms that we must come across. One is life table. We'll cover a separate section on life table. Now, life table is nothing but a record of births and deaths. Now, since it's a record of birth and death, according to the life table, the population would live, die or reproduce at different stages of life, and this is what we would cover in a separate section. The next is survivorship by age curve. That means what fraction of a starting group is still alive at each successive age. That is the survivorship by age. So at this age, how many are still alive, and that's what determines the mortality again. Now some of the concepts, as I mentioned before: miscarriage, abortion, stillbirth. Now miscarriage is a natural loss which is before the 20th week, right? Anything after the 20th week is known as stillbirth. Now miscarriage is also known as spontaneous abortion because this is natural. However, when we talk about the term abortion, that is induced, or it could be desired, right? So it is not naturally occurring. Stillbirth is also known as fetal demise, and this occurs after the 20 weeks. So 20 plus week, any such case would be considered as stillbirth. Now stillbirth can further be classified into three. It could be called as early, late or term. What does that mean? Early between 20 to 27 weeks, right? Then late between 28 to 36 weeks, and 37 or more is called as a term birth. Now in United States, 1 in 175 cases are registered for a stillbirth, and each year nearly 21,000 babies born are stillbirth. Now this number is a significantly high number, but is specifically common with certain characteristics of society, like black race is one of the common features. Then we see smoking population, low socioeconomic status, medical conditions, if any. There could be like diabetes, obesity as one of the conditions, multiple pregnancies with triplets, quadruplets, and then a previous loss of pregnancy are all responsible for stillbirth. So here we have understood what is the difference between the term. Now miscarriage and abortion we already said. Now the next is ectopic pregnancy. What does that mean? The fertilization of the egg occurs outside the uterus. Now it is usually in the fallopian tubules. Now since it's in the fallopian tubes, what would happen? The baby actually cannot grow and develop outside the uterus, and this is one of the situations that would require an urgent medical attention. So 1 in 50 pregnancies face this situation of ectopic pregnancies, and abortion, as we already said, it is induced, it is artificially occurring, and it is a medical procedure to willingly terminate. Now, this is legal in most of the cases in the first trimester. After that, the legality issues vary based on the nation to nation or country to country. Now, what is the difference between a live birth and a fetal death? If there is a complete extraction from the mother of a product of human conception, we could say, irrespective of how long the pregnancy was, what was the method, if there are signs of life, breathing, heart rate, and even the pulse in the umbilical cord could be one of the indicators. So if there are all those voluntary features associated with it, the length, the weight and the gestation does not determine whether it is a live birth, but the only thing that determines is if the certificate of live birth is issued, and that is considered as a live birth. Opposite to it, we could say, is what is called as a fetal death. So if there is no heart rate, no breathing rate that could be found, there is no definite movement of voluntary muscles, all these could be result of a fetal death. And then there is induced termination of pregnancy. What does that mean? This is a purposeful termination. This could be because of various reasons. This could be because of early age, does not want to have a child, or this could be any other reasons that it could be. But this is an interruption of the intrauterine pregnancy with the intention not to have a child, and this is called as an induced termination of pregnancy. The next is infant death and child death. Now, a death that occurs between 0 to 1 years is called as infant, right? What is neonatal? Neonatal is up to 28 days, right? So anything including 0 days to 1 year would be under infant. If we further want to reclassify, we call it as neonatal under 28 days. And then we have a child death which is classified between the age group 1 to 5 years, right? Now, these were some of the concepts that we have discussed. Coming on to the indicators that we need to understand. Now, under the indicators, the first indicator is the crude death rate. Crude death rate, or what is written as CDR, is simply the death rate, the number of deaths divided by the mid-year population into 1000. Now, this is the assumption that the risk of dying for every individual remains the same. Now, the CDR is based on a specific assumption that the risk to die is same for every individual, right? Now, let's discuss an interesting case here. We have Sweden versus Panama, right? In Sweden, the death rate is 11 per 1000. However, in Panama, it is 5 per 1000. Now, if we talk about the life expectancy, in Panama, it is 74 years. In Sweden, it is 79 years. Sweden has better healthcare infrastructure. However, in contrast to Panama, it does not have that. But if we talk about the proportion of old age, Panama has 3% and Sweden has 18%, and probably this is the reason why there is a higher death rate in Sweden as compared to Panama. So we can say Sweden is comparatively old population, Panama is comparatively young population. So simply going through the crude death rate, we cannot say that which country is doing better in terms of health condition, because health conditions are indeed better in Sweden as compared to Panama, but still the death rate is higher, and that is attributed to higher old age population. In contrast to it, Panama has higher young population. So CDR is an important indicator. As we mentioned, this assumption is that every individual is at the same risk of dying, be it young, be it old, be it infant, right? Now, when they are at the same risk of dying, we are ignoring this concept that the old people are more likely to die, and that's what is the case in the contrast that we have studied under Sweden and Panama. The next is age-specific death rate. Now,